This is the new Nissan Leaf. And I've got to say, there's one thing about the Nissan Leaf that I've got to give respect to Nissan for. Nissan are being honest about this car. And I'll explain what I mean by being honest, because many automakers are not being honest about one big thing they're claiming about their EVs, whereas Nissan actually is. So credit to them. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching the Electric Viking. Great to have you with us. What are the details here? Well, first of all, guys, I want to say thank you to our YouTube members. If you'd like to become a member, you can get access to some of our interviews and additional videos. I'll put a link in the description below. The new Nissan Leaf, it's not hugely different to the existing Nissan Leaf. Nissan has confirmed the specs. It has 214 horsepower, so about 160 kilowatt, pretty much the same as the existing one. And it has a 62 kilowatt hour battery. There's no performance upgrade. The current Nissan Leaf S, the base model, gets 147 horsepower and a smaller 40 kilowatt hour battery. That's not available in many markets, but it is available in the United States. So in terms of the batteries and the actual power, no changes, but there's other massive changes to this car, which makes it much, much better than the previous model. And probably a car now that I think is actually worth your consideration. I'm surprised I'm saying that because it is Nissan we're talking about here. Very high probability of Nissan bankruptcy. In fact, it's been predicted it will happen within the next 2 to 3 years by many, many different consultancies. And obviously, Altman Z-Score, macro trends, everyone else. But anyway, let's have a look at the car itself. So it has 19-inch alloy wheels, LED lights, an active grille shutter that adjusts for airflow. I think that's a really good idea. It also has a NACS compatible charging port for the United States. Obviously, the non-US version won't get that. Has an optional panoramic sunroof and an e-dimming function. It also uses apparently the roof uses electrochromic technology and an infrared reflective coating, eliminating the need for a physical sunshade. That's a big upgrade. There's a lot of cars, my car, Tesla Model Y, Model 3, many, many different models of car where they have a big glass roof, big glass panoramic roof, but you can get a bit of heat coming through. Now with the G6 that I own, it's got a silver reflective coating on the top. So this has something like that, but it's also got electrochromic technology. So you can darken the glass if you want to, which is kind of good if you've got kids in the car and you want them to sleep, for example. According to Nissan's design director, the Leaf will be the most aerodynamic production model the company has ever built, with a drag coefficient of 0.25 in Europe and 0.26 in the US and Japan. Why is there any difference with drag? Well, apparently region-specific tweaks like wheels and mirror designs, with the European version coming out just a bit more streamlined. Not a whole lot of difference, obviously. But Nissan is actually being honest. I've got to say, kudos to Nissan. They're not lying. Not lying, I'm going to repeat that over and over because people still don't believe me. Not lying about drag coefficient. 0.25, 0.26, that is entirely believable. Some of the other cars we're seeing out in the market are saying they're 0.19, 0.20. In other words, they're 50% more efficient. It doesn't sound like I'm, 0.20 versus 0.26 is actually an enormous gap. It's massive. And they're coming out and saying their cars, which look similar to this, are enormously more efficient through the air, which is not true. So credit to Nissan for actually being honest about their wind testing. Underneath the Leaf shares the CMF-EV platform with the larger Nissan Ariya, which means a flat floor and a roomier cabin layout. Unlike its bigger cousin, the Leaf will be exclusively available with a single electric motor. So I mentioned before, 214 horsepower, 160 kilowatt, 355 newton meters of torque, so a fair bit of torque. But apparently it'll be quieter, more acoustic glass potentially. I'm not sure why it's going to be quieter, but it's 10% smaller than before, the car overall. Nissan said it has new multi-link rear suspension, which will help improve comfort and also improve handling, with a 66% increase in lateral rigidity compared to the previous generation. In addition, the air conditioning unit has been moved under the hood, freeing up more space for the front passenger, and the liquid-cooled battery has a new thermal recovery system for improved efficiency. It sounds a little bit like a heat pump, but I can't confirm that because that's not what Nissan actually said. Richard Candler, Nissan's Vice President of Global Product Strategy, says the goal was to make the new Nissan Leaf a real contender for buyers used to gas-powered vehicles. That means a sleeker body without giving up on practicality, Looks like it still has a fair bit of boot space and long distance driving. So what range do you get with this car? Well, range with that 40 kilowatt hour battery is pretty short. It's only 186 miles, but with the bigger battery pack, it's got a 311 miles of range, which is quite a lot of range. Plus, you can add 200 kilometers of range in 40 minutes of charging. That's actually not that good, is it really? It's pretty slow. Anyway, Nissan has sold nearly 700,000 Leafs since 2010. In fact, they were the first company in the world to sell 500,000 EVs of any one model. That was the Leaf, and it took Tesla quite a while to actually surpass them. But I think this new Nissan Leaf is a much better car than the superseded Nissan Leaf. And I think Nissan have put a fair bit of work into this car. Even though it's got the same motor, I think it sounds like the battery actually has higher energy density, because if they're going to get that kind of range, I mean, if it has 311 miles of range, it's got to have high energy density, because that's 500 kilometers, right? That's EPA range. You got to get over 500 kilometers of range. It's pretty good range now. The one negative here that I see is the charging speed. It sounds like the charging speed is probably about 100 and maybe maximum 150 kilowatt, which now with all these new cars coming out with, 200, 300, 400 and 500 plus, even 1,000 kilowatt charging with the new BYDs, it's sort of a bit ancient when you have this slow charging speeds. Other than that, I think this car, it's actually quite good. What do you guys think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. Bye-bye. Is this the beginning of the end for Nissan? Well, it certainly appears so. Nissan said numerous times they were going to fire 9,000 people. I said that was probably understated, and it was. They're now firing 20,000. That's more than 15% of their entire global workforce. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching the Electric Viking, and we're seeing Nissan crumble in front of our eyes. Nissan plans to cut another 10,000 jobs worldwide, Japanese media reported on Monday, bringing total cuts, including previously announced layoffs, to 20,000. Just over 15% of its entire global workforce. Guys, this is a real point where we're seeing the Japanese automotive industry crumble. And I think it's unfortunate, but it had to happen. The struggling Japanese automaker warned last month it would book a record net loss of between $5.1 and $5.5 billion in the financial year that ended in March due to impairment charges. Yeah, there's a lot more going on than just impairment charges, though, that's for sure. Japan's third biggest automaker, whose mooted merger with Honda collapsed earlier this year, is set to announce its full year results on Tuesday.